Charity McDowell, and I am a researcher with Sports Equity Lab and a recent graduate from Stanford University studying community health and prevention research, and also had the honor of playing volleyball there. And today we're going to be talking about is the relationship between the sports environment and the athlete well-being and performance. And to set the stage a little bit, August 10th, 2025 was the one-year anniversary of the U.S. men's basketball gold medal match in Paris. And within that game, it's electric, right? The stands, the fans, everyone, like the environment is just amazing, and they won the match. It's great. Then a week later, media starts blowing up about how there's people throwing out sex toys onto the WNBA courts. What is going on? Like, obviously, we can see that these are two different environments that these athletes are being asked to participate in, and we can't help but ask the question: how does that impact the athlete? How does that impact their performance, their wellness within sport and without? And so, to capture that narrative and to better understand that, our lab actually conducted a 2024 Olympic consensus on violence and safeguarding to better understand that environment, to better understand the relationship. And within that, we had three different aspects of the environment that we were looking at: spectators' behavior, media, and economic factors. And so that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I have Spencer Jones here with me. And Spencer, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Spencer Jones, former Stanford basketball player, graduated with a degree in management science and engineering, and then just finished my rookie year with the Denver Nuggets, going on my second year.
Awesome, amazing. So I want to hear from you, starting out with just the spectators' behavior. We can think a lot about how people operate, if when they're watching the game on social media, all these different spaces. But what would you say spectators and fans really need to know about their behavior and how that impacts the athlete?
I would say, there's a lot of things you could really say. The biggest thing is, they definitely treat the game much like a TV product and everything like that. They expect a certain amount of consistency and everything like that, without kind of knowing that what makes it special is the human element of, we make mistakes, we're very inconsistent, everything like that. That's what makes the game special. If you wanted something very consistent, we'd be talking about AI disrupting, our jobs, which no one knows that's going to happen. You love that human element, but at the same time, they somehow expect this consistency of perfection with if a guy averages 30 points per game, he's going to score it every night and everything like that. And, the betting obviously goes into that and everything like that. And so, it's dialing their expectations, actually really appreciating what aspects of the game they actually like that you don't know. Steph Curry could go 1 for 10 one game, or he can go 10 for 10 the other game, and that averages out at 5 out of 10 and stuff like that. But they expect that 5 out of 10 every game and everything like that. And that puts a lot of pressure on the athlete and everything like that. Like I said, betting makes it even worse and stuff like that. And so it dilutes the relationship we kind of have in terms of that. It's almost like I said, it's the humanity of the sport that they really enjoy, but also their expectations are pretty inhuman.
Yeah, I completely agree. Are there any other environmental conditions you would say allow the athletes to truly perform at their best?
Environmental, ones that help us, that aid us in. That's interesting, because a lot of it is, it's similar to what a lot of people say with, when they become successful. It's most of it's they push off things, they dial in on what's really important rather than adding things to their plate or whatever. It's more about saying no. It's kind of similar in that aspect with your environment. A lot of it's just turning off media. A lot of guys during the season don't really, they have their teams and stuff post for them and do all that stuff, but they aren't really active themselves. They take away that. They really hone in on who they're hanging out with during the season, stuff like that. So it's really controlling more of your environment, yourself. In terms of that, you have to embrace what it is. You're especially when you get to the professional leagues and everything like that. It's a business, it's marketing, it's all of that. So you can't just say no to fans. You get fined if you aren't participating and stuff like that, because you have to run that part of the business. But it's just doing that, treating that as a job, and then when you have control to control your environment, you're saying no to a lot of these things, not bringing more to your plate, and kind of just honing in on your interactions and controlling as much of that as you can. So I think that's really is the main thing, I feel like, for most guys.
Yeah. What would you say about, for your own experiences, what have you done to try to help yourself in environments? And how would you say the environment impacts you as a player?
Yeah, no, the environment impacts a lot. It was interesting, when I got to college, I kind of got through every kind of phase of it as it was changing. NIL came middle through my way. That certainly changes the environment a little bit because now it feels like fans have a lot more in stake to your game. Like it just feels a lot more investment from alumni and stuff like that. You're given money and stuff like that, so their expectations come with it, and everything like that. And so that environment certainly added a lot of pressure. Bad games felt worse. Felt like you were kind of disappointing people. Were you worth this money and stuff like that? Are you living up to it? I'm sure now guys are constantly worried about whether their value is going up or down because it can fluctuate tremendously in just 1 year where you could have $1 million offer just coming out of high school and then you have one bad year of college and all of a sudden it's your stock could tank like 80% and stuff like that. So it's definitely adds a lot more pressure and you have to kind of, I don't know. It's a lot about relationship building is what really helps is like you just got to stay with the people who are on your side. It's always why, it's a big thing for teams to have great team chemistry, to build off the court relationships with guys, because otherwise, your relationship is based off of how you play. And then you're constantly thinking like, okay, I have a great game. So this guy will, think of me in that light. Like you need to have another aspect to that relationship to know how someone really kind of feels about you or it's like I said, it's just based on performance. Like if I mess up, like if I'm like playing with Russell Westbrook last year and I mess up his assist or something, he's pissed at me and I don't have a relationship with him off the court, all I'm going to think about is he's just pissed at me, and that the only way to change that relationship is to play better, and that just adds more pressure to your play. So I mean, the biggest thing for me is just you got to build these relationships off the court to have something, to have a foundation on how people actually see you.
Yeah, I've seen the same like within my experience. Like I completely agree with you, especially with what you harped on earlier about how it's beyond like just like it's beyond just the court. I almost said field. It's beyond just the court, right? Like it's like those relationships that you build outside of it. But then it's also just knowing like, okay, like there is a safe space and you're able to like tap into like those people around you because you can't really control the environment, right? Like that's one thing like we keep talking about, like how do you create this safe environment? But the athlete can't actually like control the people there. But you can try to navigate and like figure out, okay, how do I navigate this space and keep things as constant as I can, whether that's deleting my social media during season or like just focusing, like keeping my like my eyes on my teammates and not looking around. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that I feel like really helped me in my experiences as well. So that's really eye opening. Let's shift a little bit to the media and the role within that, especially with you playing like pro now. I think the media is probably a lot bigger than it was in college. So in your career, can you give us any examples or when you saw it of how the media helped and when it went right or when it went wrong?
I try to stay a decent, like I said, I try to control my environment as much as I say. A lot of it's saying no to stuff. So very much controlling, my interactions with media and just keeping it to whatever it needs to be, to grow certain things in my career off the court or, whether to help the team and, do all those responsibilities you have. But how it's helped, I mean, the media is great, I think, when like local stuff, local teams, when they want the fans to get to know the player actually beyond the court. I think that's when they get very beneficial, when it's in other interests they have and stuff like that, whether what they're doing off the court and everything like that becomes solidified when they just give you a better view of the person. When it is detrimental, I think is kind of the opposite, when it's just focused on the stats, statistics, everything like that. When they're just trying to get a rouse out of you, get something they can headline. The thing, like I said, the trouble is like the NBA is a business. This is part of the job. You have to participate in it, and you have to sneak around all these questions all the time and give your flat end answers, because if you give anything with too much emotion, too little emotion, it's going to be carried into something else, and all of a sudden it's turning into a team issue, some fan issue or something. You're having like a media nightmare, and it is a very thin line you always have to run through. So then it becomes a dynamic of like, yeah, fans want to know more about players, but media is always going to take something and run a mile with it. So you really can't give anyone too much. You can't be too opinionated, and you're always having to have a stepping stone and stuff like that. Where the point where like media training is a huge thing for athletes these days, just because brands are so important. And it's like I said, there's just that dichotomy of fans want to know what you give, but they also want to take something to the limit and really just try to make something into a big moment. So.
That's something I remember at Stanford. Like we would have the media people come and like brief us, like you were saying, and it was just like the things we were like, okay, if a reporter asks you this, what are you going to say? And it was like very much like, don't say this, don't say this, don't say this. Like you just have to be mindful about like what you're saying. So that's interesting to hear too from like your perspective of like I'm curious how that even impacts like your ability to be your true self if you feel like you have to filter. Do you feel like that at all or no?
No, I mean, you always have to filter. Yeah, you always have to filter. Everything's structured. I mean, like what you give the media is a curated version of your brand that you want people to know and that you can build off of, and you don't want it to be super political. You don't want it to be you don't want to be able like I said, to be too opinionated, show too much emotion, or anything like that. Like it's going to be a placid, clear, non-controversial view of yourself, which everybody has something controversial within themselves and stuff like that. You can't show that. It's also interesting, when like you can't be opinionated, but the media is extremely opinionated, and they will have as much as they can say about your performance or anything, and they'll write about you and say all this stuff. And like I said, it's still part of your job. You still have to interact with them. You hear all these opinions that you have, but you can't have an opinion yourself on it, and that can be a frustrating feeling for people. Just because, like, look, it feels like you don't really have free speech. I mean, you technically do, but you really don't. If you're trying to preserve your career, yet everyone else kind of has it, and the same way with fans, they can almost act in a way that has minimal consequences. I mean, maybe they'll get kicked out of a game for stuff like that, but like for the most part, there aren't too many disincentives for shouting at players, saying certain remarks and stuff like that. Versus, minute they catch us on the mic saying something back, I mean, we're a head case or something like that. So it's definitely limited free speech as an athlete.
Yeah. Let's shift a little bit to the financial aspects. How do you see the connection between an athlete's financial security and their overall well-being?
It's pretty loose. I mean, that's one thing you kind of learn. Everybody's got issues in the NBA, and we're all paid drastically different. I mean, all very much well off, but paid drastically different. Like, at some point where people could, quit today and live, whatever life they kind of wanted to. Yet they still choose to do what they do because it's what they love. But part of it's, it's what they know, and they don't, they just struggle with the same things, with purpose, with relationships, with all that other stuff that like money has an effect on, but no amount can fix it. You still have to do certain things, and so like it's a very loose kind of feeling. I mean, it's always a great feeling when you get that second contract. It's like, I'll be okay and everything like that. I can take care of the people I want to take care of. But then you start getting into issues where you're maybe not, you have a little closed minded kind of tunnel vision on kind of like where your career, how long it can last, and you're not really paying attention to the lifestyle creep and stuff like that, and so you're adding pressures on that you probably don't realize until maybe they get a little too big, and you're kind of having to start thinking about them. And then, like I said, you're having the same financial pressures as someone who's making probably 1% of what you're making is having. So it's a lot of them think like as soon as you get the money, you're done, worry free and stuff like that. You don't really have to control certain things that the average person's control, but you still do. I mean, you still have to pay attention to your finances. You still have to realize what's going on. And then the big thing is with more money does, in a sense, come more problems. Like I said, when taking care of people, you wanna help out your friends and everything like that. But like, is money really helping them out? Like, I mean, are they is it just a quick fix? Or do you want them to be completely dependent on you? How many mouths can you realistically feed? If you're helping this person, what's somebody else can have an opinion on? So there's a lot of things you gotta figure out and everything like that. So like, I mean, there's definitely a range of emotions and levels of happiness to everybody who's making different amounts of money. So it's definitely something to navigate.
And I love what you're saying that it's like it's more than like money. In a way, there's so much more to life than like the money aspect, and like there's more to wellness than the money. Like money's not gonna fix all of it, but it can certainly help. But like the purpose and like all those things, like there's also things that money can't buy you. So I love what you're saying there. Last question for you. I feel like this is a fun question to me. If you could tell spectators, media professionals, and sports leaders one thing they should do to help create positive change in sport, what would it be?
That's an interesting one thing spectators should do. I mean, that's such an interesting thing. There's a lot of things you want to tell spectators and everything like that. I would like. I mean, I could go back to saying like realize that what you love about the game is the human aspect and the faults and flaws that come with it. And like I said, this betting culture is everyone's expecting far more consistency than what is, and it's like if you get that consistency, the products you're not going to be interested in the product, and that's like you realize why you love sports and that human aspect of it. And I think that'll open up a lot of other avenues in terms of seeing us more as more humane and things like that. And then yeah, like I said, also with the money thing, just understand that yeah, like just because we have all this money and everything like that, yes, it protects us from kind of the despair and stuff like that. But a lot of people have habits and issues that a lot of this stuff doesn't fix, and so we still deal with a lot of problems. So I don't know. I guess the overarching thing is just bringing humanity back to the sport a little bit.
I love it. Couldn't have said it better myself. Sweet. Thank you so much, Spencer. I really appreciate you giving us the time, sharing your narrative, sharing your experiences. It's really a good reminder that like research and also our own experiences continue to show us that creating safe environment within sport for athletes is on all of us. It's on the spectators, it's on the media, it's on the athletes. Like it's on all of us to create these safe spaces for each other. So thank you once again for being a part of this, and I'm excited to see you in October at the Stanford event.